Now, climate change is an urgent global issue with demands for personal, collective, and governmental action. The detrimental effects of climate change go beyond mere changes in the weather, and if unchecked, these impacts will spread and worsen with more animal extinction, water shortages, and displaced communities. As at now, the most important thing is that we act on it to stop it. Today, we are joined by an environmentalist, Benson Okelo, to demystify on the topic of climate action. So, Benson, thank you so much for dedicating your time for this discussion. Right, so you may introduce yourself to our viewers on the camera. They get to know who Benson is.
Yes, thank you so much for hosting me tonight. I'm Benson Christopher, environmentalist and an urban planner.
Right.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here tonight.
Thank you so much for that. Now, into the discussion of the night, climate action. When we are talking about climate change, what exactly is climate change? Probably you could give us a brief history and where we as a planet in matters climate change.
That's a good question, Mr. Kenneth. And therefore, we are here tonight to, to break the notion about climate change. We are here to set things apart. We are here, to try to analyze deeply about this issue. And basically, climate change is, changes in the, shift in conditions of temperature, weather patterns caused by carbon dioxide from, emissions of, fossil fuels. And of course, fossil fuels, we have, there is oil, natural gas, and of course, coal.
Right.
Now, when we talk about history of, climate change, it's been there in the past. Remember the days of Industrial Revolution when people utilized coal to, generate electricity for producing various, products in the industry. And in the process, they emit a lot of gases into the atmosphere. And therefore, it's been happening. It began back in 1750, that is around 2,000 years ago, and it's been here. And right now, the conditions of temperature are so intense compared to the past. And this is an issue that keeps piling up day by day, and therefore we must address it. Yeah.
Right. Now, still on that, what exactly could we say that causes climate change that we are facing on our time right now?
That's a good question. Now, generally, I'll say, or generally, I'll put my point, in two instances.
Right.
We have human causes of climate change, and of course, we have, natural causes of climate change. But basically, our main discussion will be about, the human causes, because these are the major players, that the contributor, that the people who really interact with the environment on a daily basis.
Right.
And now, on the natural causes is just basically about changes, the intensity of the sun and etc. And now on the human causes, we have now over reliance on fossil fuels. Human beings tend to utilize fossil fuels for producing, for generating electricity,
right,
and so many stuff. And in the process, you realize that the pollution is so intense and so high. They pollute the environment, they increase global warming. Yeah. And again, still on human activities, we have, deforestation, a major problem with the ecosystem, a major problem with, the climate change. Deforestation is about cutting down trees and failing to plant, to replace that. People cut trees for various reasons, for farming, clear lands for farming, and of course, constructing buildings and roads. Yeah, so generally, humans are the major contributors of climate change. Yeah.
Right. Now, when we're talking about climate change, probably we would want the population to know how does climate change, come by. So probably you could give us examples of things that we seeing around that, could signify that indeed we are having climate change.
A good question, Mr. Honestly, this is something that, you don't need rocket science to really explain or understand. We need our eyes to see.
Right.
We need our ears to listen, and of course, a heart to feel for the millions of Kenyans who are already suffering because of, climate change. Now, let's begin with our own country, because we need to be the point of reference. In the past, we've had conditions of, we had locust invasion, and that was an issue, from South Africa coming all the way to East Africa, because locusts, they survive best, in warm climate, right, and they are caused by two cyclonics. That is, we have the Lugano and the Luzano, and therefore you realize that when locusts invaded our lands, crops died, and so many issues. We also had, malaria. Malaria, the Anopheles mosquitoes survive in warm climate. People die. We have the dengue fever, the Rift Valley fever, and so many issues. Sometimes back we had an issue of rising levels of the lake in Lake Baringo. There was Victoria, and you realize that the effects are so devastating. People are forced to move. They are forced to move. Crops, they die. Same happens to livestock.
Right.
Yeah. And then apart from that, we already experiencing delayed rains. While you expect to see rains during when people grow their crops, you expect to see rains come maybe to support cropping or production. But then unfortunately, all of a sudden things are not getting as expected. It's so hard. It's so heartbreaking. Yeah. And then we've seen there is rise in the conditions of there are heat waves in some parts of West Africa, that is Nigeria, and then we have flooding, excess flooding in West Africa, our neighboring country, that is Uganda. We've seen that, and therefore the effects are so intense. We need to see them. We don't need to be told. We need to see. We just need eyes to see, and therefore the effects are so intense, and they're there. Those are some of the effects of climate change.
Very interesting bit when you mentioned about the locust invasion. Is it really a matter of climate change? Because probably I thought maybe when the locust invaded, is probably because they were searching for food or something.
Not really about food. I'll take you back. There is what is called, the cyclone. These are just changes in the atmosphere, and so generally, locusts are not they are not ours, like the East Africa. This is an issue from South Africa. They emerge from the oceans. Remember, I know when the oceans are so cold, they can't survive there. So therefore, they migrate the same way you can move from point A to point B. So you migrate to search for greener pastures to survive somewhere where you can meet your need. Therefore, when they came to East Africa, they found crops all over, and therefore they're just comfortable here. I know for them they found it easy, but then for us we saw this was a damage to our future, damage to our crop production. Therefore,
But then, in as much as yes, there were a damage, of course, we can't, leave that out, because at some point we were seeing some communities really enjoying having them because they were eating them or something. What do you say about that?
Okay, that is just now, it depends on the mindset, how somebody welcomes the thing, just an issue, the mindset, how really somebody thinks about locust. For me, if you ask me about locust invasion, then now imagine I grow crops over 3 or 4 acres of land, and then locusts come from nowhere, and then they feast on my crops. I get so much annoyed, I get so much angered.
Sure.
Yeah. So, people have different perception, people have different ideas, suggestions towards the locust invasion.
Right.
Generally.
Now, let's get away from that. Now, into the recent conference that we had, the 7th Devolution Conference that was held in Makueni County. Now, the theme of this conference was the multi-level governance for climate action. So bring us to speed with the success stories of this conference towards mitigating the effects of climate change in the country.
Very well. That is a good question. First of all, I want to thank the President of Kenya, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, for integrating climate action. That shows you how we prioritize. That shows you how serious this issue is.
Right.
And when you remember when the evolution was held, and my good friend Governor Kibuta Kibwana's County Makueni last week, the main discussion was about climate change, climate action. That is now standard, Sustainable Development Goal number 13. That is climate action. Yeah, and so far we can say the agreement was about ensuring consistent collaboration between the PCs, the CSS, the governors, the locals, the employer and the employed. It was about working together towards achieving climate action, initiatives. And success we've seen now, we see now communities now becoming, they becoming familiar with some of these issues. We are able to see how now civic education is playing a role now. People go on the grassroots. They now educate the community members about some of these issues of climate change. They are told about issues of effects of climate change on their ecosystem. They are told about their personal health, and of course they are told about fresh water resources, and of course agriculture. And therefore it was just about consistent interaction, collaboration between the heads, the departmental heads. Yeah.
Right.
As you remember, again, environmental issue is not an individual person goal. This is something that we must do. We must do as a team. We must come together and work. So generally, it was just about coming together, and we've seen there are so many success we've witnessed. Like the other day, I visited Masabit County, Machakos. I witnessed so many changes. In the environment right now. People are now taking this issue seriously. Yeah.
Now, probably to dive away from matters of climate action, on this conference, because it was a devolution conference, of course, now talking about the 47 counties, the devolved units. And one of the major problems that was coming in from the devolved units is that they were facing financial problems of the national government remitting funds to the devolved units. Now, on this matter of climate action, they came into agreement that they should, set aside funds to mitigate these climate actions things. So, do you think it will really, these devolved units will really use the funds well to ensure that they mitigate some of these effects? Because funding was a big issue. That's from the national government. Now, do you think they will really utilize whatever is there for the climate change?
Actually, it's a question of yes, though. We should ask ourselves. It's a question of an individual. It's a question of morality. How somebody is ready, how somebody is prepared. As you know, in our country, issue of money has been a problem. People embezzle funds, the leaders, and therefore, how these funds will be used to mitigate some of these issues of climate change. We're here to see. All right. Yeah, based on the previous results, on the previous statistics about how money is being used. Not really in the docket of environment. Sometimes maybe in sports, health, in other sector. Therefore, we can't say that now environment they're going to succeed. Not really. These are the same people who are also in these are the brothers, the cousins who are also in the other ministries. Then therefore we can't really say that they're going to achieve. We're here to see how it goes. Right. Because there's always saying and doing. Those are two different things. Sure. You can say and then you don't do, or you can do and say. Therefore, we're here to see how it goes.
Right. Yeah. Now, still on the same breath as the devolution conference that we have, let's talk about the COP26, the conference in Glasgow. So, what was this COP26 about? Because I think Kenyans really need to know what the COP26 conference was about, and probably what are some of the findings of the agreement regarding the climate issue.
Very well. Actually, when we talk of Glasgow, this was a summit that was held in Scotland. Right. Glasgow was about leaders coming together from across the globe, over 125 leaders coming together, sit down and address this issue of, climate change. That tells you it's now a global issue. It's not a country issue, it's not a state issue, it's a global issue. So the reason why people met at Glasgow was in response to the Paris Agreement. That is also another issue that I want to bring in. Glasgow Summit generally is about addressing, climate change, coming up with the most effective ways to approach this issue, solving it once and for all. Right. Now, back in 2015, there was an agreement known as Paris Agreement, which was agreed upon, where now the developed countries, they were to fund those countries that are still developing, the small islands, They support them with funds that they can use to mitigate, adapt to some of these ways of, supporting or really tackling climate change. And therefore, the reason why Glasgow was held, that is now the COP26, the reason it was held to assess, review and reflect on the agreement of Paris, that is 2015.
The 2015.
Yeah, you understand? Right. And therefore, the findings are that you realize that we are nowhere near where we want to be. What do I mean? The findings were that the major, the developed countries such as the UK, the US, the China.
The G7.
Yeah, the G7. Yeah, right. A good term for that, right? The G7 agreed to fund, they agreed to fund some of these countries. But then statistics shows that they have not done it. They have not actualized it. And therefore, it becomes a problem. Everything is now on a dilemma. We don't know where we're heading to, right? So really, we realized that this issue it has not been implemented. Yeah. But then the good thing that I picked from Glasgow you realize that leaders now thought of now this way. Now that we are yet to really implement. We are yet to meet our promise. That is now funding some of these countries. How are we going to solve this issue? Now, they talked of. I remember the president of Kenya, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, when he was given a microphone to address the delegations.
Right.
He mentioned something to do with adopting what is called green hydrogen energy to replace coal in the generation of electricity. I believe that is a very positive impact. That is a very important way to go towards solving climate change.
Right.
Yeah. So generally about the Glasgow was coming together and really emphasizing on how we are going to remit funds. I remember the Prime Minister of Barbado talked detailedly. She was really emotional. It tells you how intense this issue is. The front line countries. Those countries that really the islands, name them. The Mauritius, name them. Right. These people need the support. They can't do them on their own, and therefore Glasgow generally was about really assessing, reviewing, reflecting on the Paris Agreement 2015.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, it's really important to us that you've mentioned that climate action is a matter of global concern from the COP26 conference that was held in Glasgow, Scotland. So, what are some of the actions probably that should be undertaken that Kenyans need to know that some of the action that should be undertaken to mitigate the effects of climate change?
Very well. Now, Mr. Mondi, I'll tell you this, and it's very important. Those watching at home, those who are listening to us, this is very important. Fast and immediate solution to climate change is adopting the right mindset. Right? Adopting the right mindset. First, we must accept yourself. We must avoid having this difference, this notion that climate change is just there. Oh, we were just born and then we found it there. We don't do anything. No, we need to have the right mindset. Thereafter, then ask yourself, what do we have? What do we have as a country? What do we have? What do we have? Before, okay, my good friend Robert Vildon normally tells me, before seeking support from outside, first ask yourself, what do you have as a country? What do you have as a nation? So that when you go to seek support from outside, people can listen to you. They can see the steps you made, and therefore they are able to support you, and you stay accountable. Now, once you change your mindset, remember this is going to be the dominating conversation about this issue. Once you change your mindset, then it's now about action. And action, I'll try to really talk about now the international body that is now the international members of this. The members that met at the Glasgow conference, the Paris, and everything. The first, once you accept to change your mindset, you go to what is called now financing.
Right.
Now, you need to remit funds based on the agreement of the Glasgow. You need to remit funds. Yeah. Developed countries must play. They must take a center stage because they're major contributors of these emissions. Yeah. These are countries that they developed several years ago. Yeah. And they began using coal. And therefore, you realize that there are so many effects, there are so many emissions coming from this, coming from the industrial, the practices, Therefore, they must take a center stage. They must, remit funds.
Right.
Though we can't say that the fund is enough, but then at least they must show their commitment towards tackling this issue, tackling this menace. It's actually a monster. I'd call it a monster in our society because it's part of us. It's here to stay, and therefore, let me just tell you something. We have two options here. We either ignore it deals with us, that is now climate change, or we either first one is about we either ignore it deals with us, or we face it and deal with it. Sure. I remember the latter is worse than the former, and therefore this is something that we can't run away from. Yeah. And once you finance, some of the developing countries, and of course, financing is about now, this money is used to really mitigate. Yeah, it's used to mitigate and of course conduct adaptation.
Right.
And before I even go further, maybe just explain briefly about adaptation. Adaptation is about shifting to the current and the future effects of climate change.
Right.
Yeah, and of course mitigation is about reducing the severity of climate change, the severity of greenhouse gases effect. It's about reducing. Therefore adaptation and mitigation, these are complex. They go together. They're compatible issues. It's all about it's about adaptation and mitigation. Yeah, so once money is being remitted, then we move to what is called technology.
Right.
Yeah, technology is adapting with innovative ways of approaching this issue. I term it menace because now it's dangerous. When something is fat was menace, then it becomes dangerous. The nitty-gritties over time, it becomes dangerous. Yeah. Sure. So once finance has been remitted, now we move to technology. We come up with a suitable innovative dynamics. We've seen now the immediate one is what is called green roofing. Green roofing is about enabling people to grow crops on their roofs. Right. That is something that is very interesting. That is a boost to the ecosystem. Yeah, people are able to grow crops using technology. Yeah, imagine just sitting in your house and then you have your farm up there. It's very interesting one. Yeah, that is one of the ways of technology, how technology can support. Then we have smart cities. This is about technology running businesses here and there. You can monitor traffic through technology. And when I talk about technology, if you're able to monitor traffic, you're able to predict, you're able to tell the amount of gases emitted from the combustion vehicles, to the atmosphere. Therefore, smart city is just one of the ways to support this. And then, like I told you, smart city is happening. It's there in Singapore. The other day I went to Berlin, Germany. I witnessed for myself. These things happening. It's there in Amsterdam, China, Manchester, London, several parts of this country. And therefore, this is something that can be done. That's technology. Then now the final one and very important is now capacity building. This is where now our discussion is centered mostly. Right. This is where now our people have really lagged behind. Capacity building is about inculcating, telling people, let people know. You need to create awareness. Tell people that climate change is real. We need to wake up. Hey, let's wake up. Climate change is real. Therefore, you must wake up. You must tell people. And this is something that you can't achieve maybe on a fortnight. No, it takes us time. It takes us a lot of time, yeah? And therefore, capacity building begins from the leaders who act as role models. Then they go down the grassroots. They tell people. It's a concept of trickle down effect, where from the top to the bottom, right? You're able to educate people. Tell them. I always like using the examples of youths. My good friend Robert Vidal will tell you, youth are the most vibrant people.
Sure.
Once you mobilize youth, you are sure to achieve, right? Sure. You're sure to achieve, and therefore youth must stay put. They must be abreast with some of these things. The reason I'm saying that because now you see youth, the future of climate depends on our current situation. Yeah. And we are the people who will be faced by these challenges if we don't really act, if we don't play a center stage. And therefore, we must be vibrant. Let's use the hashtags, climate action now. Right. We have the opportunity. Let's have an open discussion. Let's come on the table. Let us agree. One thing that you really understand with the youth, these people have fresh memories. These people are, these people are sound. When you talk to them, when you tell them what concerns them the most, they will be able to act. And of course, protest. Not really about now you protest, you carry banners, climate action now. Stop throwing waste anyhow. Those things, they send a lot of messages. You understand? They send messages to people. Yeah. And therefore, when we talk about civic education, people are able to know. They're able to be told. Imagine now maybe you are a grandfather, and then now your grandson tells you, don't do this and that. When you pollute environment, it becomes dangerous. You realize that when you are a grandfather, you listen to your grandson more than you listen to a politician, right? True. So that is one way we can use. Those are the major ways you can use to really solve the problem of climate change.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, probably in about 2 minutes as we wind up this discussion, what could be your final words to the general population in matters pertaining to climate change?
Now, my final word is about, like I told you, we must accept these issues here with us. And therefore, like the president has talked about now, the 2 billion trees, vegetation cover. Let us come out and plant these trees. We'll be able to achieve what is called carbon sequestration. This is where we trap carbon from the air and store them in the trees. And therefore, let's wake up from our slumber and do something. Mother Nature is bleeding. It's upon us to really understand this situation and rise and wake up and achieve everything.
All right.
Yeah. So that's it.
All right. So thank you so much, Benson, for dedicating your time for this discussion. We hope to have such discussions again and again until the general population gets to know the importance of mitigating the effects of climate change.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
All right. So on that, we are taking our final break here on QTV Primetime News. In a moment, we shall be coming back with more, so stay with us.